it's kind of hard to follow Dylan. But we'll try. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد الفاتح لما أغلق والخاتم لما سبق الناصر الحق بحقه والهادي إلى صراطك المستقيم. The subject of social activism is one that's rife with challenges to try to navigate through, because there's a lot of very driven people, very emotionally invested, very attuned to the concepts of justice, very attuned to oppression and highlighting it wherever it is. And so it can be a bit challenging to speak about it rationally, because human beings are not rational beings after all. Adeza Bigovic, in his book Islam Between East and West, which I recommend, I always get asked, what should I give to my non-Muslims, Muslim friends who ask me about Islam? Here are the books. Adeza Bigovic, Islam Between East and West. Muhammad Asad, The Road to Mecca. Charles Guy Eaton, Islam and the Destiny of Man. So Adeza Bigovic talks in his book about what a human being is. And he says you're this intersection between, you're like a window into the divine. You're the intersection between the spiritual and the material. We're neither material or not spiritual, we're both. And Islam is quite unique in that, Muhammad Asad points this in The Road to Mecca, contrary to other religions, we don't have the Cartesian dualism of you're just a spirit and we're trying to get rid of the body, which is kind of taught in traditional Christianity, that the body is bad. Or that if you go to the naturalistic route, we're just material, and what you have an illusion of regarding your consciousness, that's just your brain synaptic plasticity going off, and just hormones going off. We're not one or the other, we're both. And so when we talk about social justice activism, you have to acknowledge that. You have to acknowledge that emotions are rationalized, and they drive reasoning as well. You also have to acknowledge that your experience regardless of whatever group that you identify with, is oftentimes unique and limited by the group that you belong to. So, this concept of, for example, of mansplaining. As a man, I can never say from a Muslim perspective, I don't know what it means to wear a hijab. The challenges of the hijab. I can try to intellectualize it, rationalize it. There was a situation where I had my one time where I had somebody kind of give me a bit of a vitriolic attack, go back to your different country, this and that. And I felt this kind of visceral response coming on. My reaction was, I sized up the guy and I could take him. If he comes at me, I can take him. But immediately afterwards, when I was thinking about it, I was like, wow. Just the day before, I was talking to a Muslim sister who was telling me about how often they get that. And when I sent them this message, like, welcome to our world. But the thing that I thought of was, wow, my first thought was, I could take him. What if I was a woman? That's not the first thing you think of, unless you're an MMA fighter. But the first thing you think of is fear. I'm about to get attacked. Where can I hide? Is there somebody that can look after me? Is there a crowd over here? Everywhere you go, it controls your movements. There's a burden of wearing this that's just different. So, for a guy to speak about that is kind of silly. You'll never get it. And the challenge with social justice activism is to start to recognize that there are some things that you may never get. You just won't. So you just don't talk about it. You let others speak about it. You let those, not for tokenized representation, but you let those who are actually dealing with these challenges speak about these from their perspective, because they know what's best. There's something that teaches in medicine when it comes to the indigenous and Torres Strait Islanders. The cultural challenges. Some people have a disdain for that. They don't like discussing that. But we tell them, get somebody who can translate for you. It's not enough for you to speak English. They speak English. There are certain things that don't get translated. Nevertheless, for Muslims, because we're speaking from a Muslim perspective, there's a bit of a discomfort with this kind of all out, let's just buy into the narrative and just ally ourselves with every group out there that is speaking about social justice without engaging with critical thought about it. The Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us believers, Muslims, He tells us what positioning we should have. that you were the best of nations, not because of any virtue of birth or accident of upbringing or identity. You're the best of nations because you do something. What is that thing? You command for good and you forbid evil. So when we talk about social justice, we have to also define what is just. Is it just equality? Is it equity? Well, how do you define that? By whose standards are you setting these things? If you're promoting looking after women's rights, for example, what assumptions are you making to fight for women's rights? Are you assuming that for a woman to get equality, she has to meet the standards of a man? And that's quote-unquote success. What are the criteria that you use? So for us, for Muslims, it's the Quran. You always have to go back to the Quran. Imam al-Bukhari writes in his collection of authentic hadiths, he starts off the whole collection with باب العلم قبل القول والعمل. The chapter of knowledge before you speak or act. So you have to ask yourself, what is the criteria? Well, what does Allah and His Messenger say? What does this Quran say? The thing about being social, and I'll just pick up something from Dylan that he mentioned. Islam is kind of unique in that even if you try to be private, it will publicize you. If you're a woman, you're going to put on the hijab in public now. If you're a man, you can try to hide it. You could live in an era where I look like a hipster. Can you really tell? Right? But, Dhuhr prayer comes, sorry guys, I gotta go pray. What are you doing? Where are you going off at these weird hours of the day? Why do you have to take off at 12:30? Then again, you have to take off at 3:30. And then you have to, what's the rush at 6:20? The night is young, I gotta pray Maghrib. That's the rush. So it publicizes you in a way. And when the authors that I mentioned before, as they observe, same with, for the Arab speakers, Malik bin Nabi is a great one to read for as well. They mentioned something about Islam that's quite unique in that there is no division between your moral compass and the actions that you engage in. Politically speaking, what is politics? Politics is an extension of ethics. What is ethics? It's based on some sort of metaphysical perspective. Well, how do you get your metaphysics? For Muslims, we get it from the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, the Prophet ﷺ did tell us, أَحَبُّ النَّاسِ إِلَى اللَّهِ أَنْفَعُهُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The most beloved of all people to Allah, to God Almighty, is the one who brings the most benefit to all people. But how do you bring this benefit? Oftentimes, people think what's good for them may not actually in the long term be good for them. We're engaged in some really interesting thought experiments that have translated into social experiments that go against the test of time. Whether you go look at it from a naturalistic perspective or from a religious perspective, we're engaging in tinkering with society in quite unique ways. And for Muslims, what it means to be a Muslim, Islam, when we translate it as submission, we submit so that we become free. We submit so that we are not beholden to any expectations. The greatest act of courage that you can take as a Muslim today is actually social courage. We're not left and we're not right. We're not conservative, we're not liberal, we're not progressive, we're not this or that. You can't really put Islam under one camp. Because there are certain things, well, conservatives will agree with. And other things, liberals, sure enough, yeah, we'll go with it. And other things will be progressive on it. Other things will be a bit more traditional Islam. But the compass that we use is, again, back to the Quran and Sunnah. And I'll just finish off with this intellectual, social courage that you have. Just as a word of advice to the young activists who, the prophets of social activism, I guess you could say, would be people like James Baldwin, Malcolm X, these great figures. And they are great figures indeed, Malcolm X, rahimahullah. But to be a Muslim is to have the courage to say, that speech that was so powerful that Malcolm X made, the ballot or the bullet, is actually quite problematic. Because in it he says, religion is my private business, keep it at home, it only governs my personal behavior, it has nothing to do with my social and political dimension. That actually is in line with the thing that the people of Shu'aib alayhi salam said to him. قالوا يا شعيب الصلاة تأمرك أن نترك ما يعبد آباؤنا أو نفعل في أموالنا ما نشاء. Shu'aib, peace be upon him, his people, when he called them to do as according to God's will, they said to him, does your prayer, does your Lord tell you that we can't do whatever we want with our money and with our social behaviors and all that stuff? Now this would be considered a type of, like a blasphemy. Oh my God, you're criticizing Malcolm X. Sure, yeah, you should be able to criticize whoever. The thing about Islam and being in a state of submission is that you have this intellectual audacity almost, that as a believer, I'm a bit audacious. I don't really buy into some authority that someone gave me, that this person said so, and this person, he or she, whoever they are, they're elevated so high that I don't question it. No, I question it because my compass, my reference point, is not that person's writings. Infallibility ended when the Prophet ﷺ passed on to his Lord. And the last verses were, today I've completed your religion. So I implore and advise and call on to the young activists, the older activists, whoever, because we really can be all young at heart, if you will. Age is nothing but a number. It's really about your connection with your Lord. That's how it is. So if you haven't studied, if you haven't done these things, I just encourage people to go read up, find your teachers, sit with the imam, study with them. And I think I'll leave it at that because I've definitely passed on my 9 minutes. SubhanAllah wa bihamdihi, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.